Good afternoon to everybody on the West Coast. Good evening to everybody on the East Coast. My name is Kath Sakalakis. I'm a Brady volunteer. I'm a member of the San Francisco Brady chapter, and I also help with fundraising as part of the Northern California Regional Leadership Council. And Marissa, if you could start the slideshow, please, that would be great. So one of the reasons that I chose Brady is the dedication of the amazing Brady staff and volunteers and the opportunity to meet outstanding leaders such as Assemblymember David Chiu, who's with us today, to receive the Brady Leadership Legislator Award for Excellence in Leadership. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Marissa. And it's my very great honor today to introduce two Brady leaders who are dedicated to stopping gun violence. You'll see here Amanda Wilcox has served since 2005 as the legislative advocate for Brady, California. She's co-president of the Sacramento Brady chapter. She leads the statewide Gun Violence Prevention Coalition as well. She's been instrumental in enacting many significant state firearm laws, and over her tenure, she's helped 83 firearm bills get signed into law while stopping every bad bill. And then we also have with us today Mattie Scott, the Brady United California State President, founder and executive director of Healing for Our Families and Our Nation. She's also the San Francisco chapter leader of Mothers in Charge, a mother and grandmother, and a fearless leader who's dedicated her life to gun violence prevention. And I'll turn this over to Mattie. Thank you, Mattie.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of this wonderful conference, Brady United Against Gun Violence. It is my pleasure and honor to present to you our awardee, our friend, our elected leader, and our assembly member, David Chiu. David, it is such a great honor to have you on today, all the work that you have done in legislation, especially the last bill, AB 2847, the microstamping bill that's going to help solve crimes and cases like mine that's been unsolved for 22 years. We just appreciate all of your support and your efforts on all of your due diligence with gun violence prevention to help save lives and making our communities safer. That bill is sitting on Governor Gavin Newsom's desk, and we are waiting for his signature. So we want to present you with the Brady Excellence in Leadership Award to our wonderful Assembly member, David Chiu, who's our friend, our elected leader, and supporter of gun violence prevention. And now over to our amazing advocate, Miss Amanda Wilcox.
Okay, let's do an audio test. Can everyone hear me okay? It's working, yay. Okay, so I'm just really delighted to be here and to joining everyone today to acknowledge an outstanding member of our state legislature. So Assemblymember David Chiu represents the 17th Assembly District that encompasses Eastern San Francisco, and he is currently in his third term. Still okay with the audio?
Yes.
Okay, because I was hearing an echo. He is chair of the California Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus, chair of the Assembly Housing and Community Development Committee, and serves on numerous other committees, including Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, Internet Media Committee, Budget Committee, Business and Professions Committee, and Judiciary Committee. So he is one busy guy. Before his time in the state legislature, Assemblymember Chiu served as Democratic counsel to the United States Senate Constitution Subcommittee, and then worked as a criminal prosecutor in the San Francisco DA's office and as a civil rights attorney with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Prior to being elected to the Assembly, Assemblymember Chiu was president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors for 6 years, elected by his fellow supervisors because of his skills as a consensus builder. So I first met Assemblymember Chiu after the mass shooting in San Bernardino in 2015. You may remember in that shooting, 14 people were killed and 22 were injured. They were employees of the San Bernardino County Public Health Department attending a training and Christmas party when one of the workers opened fire. 14 killed, 22 were injured, and the shooters used essentially bullet button assault weapons that have been modified to be bullet button assault weapons. So the next month, Assemblymember Chiu introduced a very ambitious bill, AB 1663, which would have been the final fix for a strong assault weapons law in California. Basically, it required that, it said that a semi-automatic centerfire rifle could have no exchangeable magazine. It had to be fixed, period. That would remove the ability to do the rapid reload and maintain the fire that kills so many people with these assault weapons. The bill was so bold that, unsurprisingly, it was held in the Appropriations Committee. However, I remember that Assemblymember Chiu made a big impression on me that year. I also remember that he missed one of the press conferences because his son was born that day, and he had his priorities straight. He was at the birth of his son. But I could see that he understood our issue, that he was a persuasive speaker, and I knew that we wanted him to carry our next big firearm bill. He was clearly passionate about gun violence prevention. And he was very eager to introduce a big bill. And he was very patient until we found the right bill at the right time, which is this year's microstamping bill, AB 2847. And I just wanted to say that despite all the obstacles in the legislature due to the pandemic, the Assembly member continued to push AB 2847 as a priority. And without him pushing it as a priority, the bill may have not even received a hearing in one of the policy committees or in the Appropriations Committee. So to put it in context, on average, the governor is sent about 1,000 bills each year to sign. This year, he was sent only for 428. So we are very lucky that one of the bills he is considering is AB 2847. And Assemblymember Chiu did this while he was also pushing a very contentious COVID-related eviction moratorium bill, which the governor has already signed. So Brady California is extremely pleased to present you with the Legislator Award for Excellence in Leadership, and we hope to be celebrating the governor's signature on AB 2847 very soon. So thank you for all that you're doing to save lives in California.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start by crossing my fingers in front of you about getting this bill signed. And let me just start by thanking all of you who are advocating for Brady, California, but particularly the amazing leaders who have embarrassed me with your introduction. Amanda Wilcox, you have been just the guiding light of this organization for many, many years. I've been following your work, and it's just been an honor to be in the trenches with you. And I want to say both to you and to Mattie and to others, as a relatively recent father, I can only imagine what you have gone through. And part of what fuels my work is just thinking about what world I want my son to grow up in. One word that my wife and I do not use around our son is the word that spells G-U-N, because we are trying to avoid his understanding of what firearm violence could be about. But I will tell you, he knows what it's about because it is pervasive in our culture. It's something that's discussed in his nursery school. His classmates talk about shooting each other. And it just breaks my heart, but it fuels the work that we do. I also want to just give a shout out to, I know you were honoring my brother Rudy Corpus from United Players, who does just incredible work in my city of San Francisco, teaching the next generation of young people how to fight violence and not each other. And I also, because I've got two great staffers on this call, I just want to shout out to both Corinne and Rihanna for my staff, because they make me look good as an elected official, but they did all the work. So thank you, Rihanna and Corinne. Let me just talk for a few moments about just how I got into this issue. I grew up in Boston, and I remember when I was 11 years old, my dad had the radio on in the car when President Reagan was shot next to that hotel in Washington. And the news was the president was shot, but the news of that first hour was not that his press secretary, Jim Brady, had been paralyzed. And that was the birth of this organization. I mean, it really had an impact on me. I remember thinking, how is it that someone would want to take a lethal weapon and try to kill someone with it who was running our country? Even though today, 40 years later, I diametrically opposed a lot of what were some of the views of that Reagan administration. But that being said, it just didn't make any sense to me. In my 20s, my first entree into public policy, I learned very quickly the power of the gun lobbies. In my early 20s, I drafted a law in New York City during a gun violence epidemic related to the war on drugs. It was the first law that would have created strict liability for gun manufacturers. We passed it in New York City. It was a model law. And then a couple years later, the NRA went to Washington, D.C. and got some of their buddies to pass a federal law to say that the local New York City law would exist no longer. A couple years later, I was working for the United States Judiciary Committee, and my boss at the time, Senator Paul Simon, asked me to write a law to help close some loopholes that address gun dealers, because a lot of guns flow through that part of the industry. And I remember writing those amendments. I was super excited about it. They came up for a vote on the floor, and we had our votes stripped dramatically, like kind of overnight. I also remember during that time period, for those of you who remember the date, July 1st, 1993 in San Francisco, in my city is San Francisco, a man walked into a San Francisco law firm as a young lawyer. I remember this very well. The law firm of Pett and Martin, and gunned down 8 innocent people at 1 California Street, which is in the heart of the district I represent today. And I remember our California State Senator, Dianne Feinstein, waving assault weapons bills and crying out, why is it that we allow weapons of mass destruction to be sold legally? And while she was able to get that first ban passed, we all know what's happened since then. I remember those moments for my 20s as a 50-year-old now, because they represent, in my mind, the worst of politics, how one special interest can block laws that literally save lives. And I think about this every hour, because in the hour that we're in, and I know Mattie knows this and Amanda knows this, at least 4 fellow Americans will get gunned down, right? It's someone's mother, someone's son. And this is why we do the work that we do. And so when the Brady campaign, the Gifford Center asked me to think about this bill about microstamping, I remember first thing I did when I was discussing with my staff, I went on Google to figure out what's this technology doing and what's it about. And it was a complete no-brainer to do. But it's been quite a journey. In fact, it's been I think it's fair to say it's been over a 13-year journey. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, around the country, many crimes go unsolved because you don't get a match between the evidence at the scene and a suspect. I can tell you this as a former prosecutor. And in particular, gun crimes don't get solved. Oftentimes, you show up at the scene of a crime, you see the bullet casings, but you have no idea what gun they came out of. And we all know, whether you're a survivor or victim or the relative of a family member who has been gunned down, everyone deserves to know what happened. Everyone deserves that justice. I got to know Mattie Scott because she would come to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors for years when I was presiding, and she would tell the story of your son. And I just want to thank you for that, because the pain I can only imagine it takes to tell those stories time after time. But that is what moves change. And that is why we do the work we do. So fast forward, when Brady came to me and asked me to carry this bill, the history, as I think some folks know, is that 13 years ago, one of my predecessors, Mike Feuer, the current city attorney of LA, passed a law that required new firearms to include microstamping technology. The idea that you could stamp a bullet casing in at least 2 spots. But as we know, the gun industry they do what they always do. They sued and they sued and they sued. And for 12 years, they battled this law up in court. And they said that they couldn't microstamp in 2 places, but they conceded that they could actually microstamp in 1. And so by the brilliance of advocates from Brady and others, you guys came to me and said, let's change the law. Let's stop fighting stupid fights in court. The gun industry says they can stamp in 1 place. Let's call their bluff. And that's what this bill fundamentally is about. I also want to just say, thanks to the brilliance of gun safety advocates, we also have included provisions in this bill to prevent accidental gun deaths. Because we know, in addition to violent gun deaths, there are so many 4-year-olds who find their daddy's gun, it's loaded, it goes off, and horrible things happen. This bill also requires new guns that are sold in California to ensure that you have a chamber load indicator, so you know if there's something in that chamber. A magazine disconnect mechanism. These are basic safety features that are easy to implement that the industry has refused to do. So I just want to thank all of you for moving this forward. This was not an easy year. We were told about 2 months after the pandemic started that we should not move forward any bills that were not directly related to the pandemic. Which one would suggest, well, how is this bill related to the pandemic? Well, it just so happens during this time period of the pandemic and the recession and a structural conversation around racism and wildfires, we have seen a tremendous increase in the number of violent deaths in our communities. And this still continues. So we all successfully made the case for it. I also want to just again thank Mattie Scott, because you were an amazing witness in our hearings. It's one thing for me as a policymaker to make a case. It's another thing for a lawyer from the Brady campaign or from the Gifford Center to make their case. It's another thing for a mother to share your story about how you do not have justice for your son because of an unsolved crime. So we were able to get this done, although not with the full help of law enforcement, even though this is fundamentally a bill that helps with crime fighting. There were at least 8 law enforcement officers around the state, as well as our California Attorney General, who sided with us, who understood the value of this bill. But we were opposed by law enforcement. I think it's important for us to know this, because these are our allies who are supposed to keep us safe, but we often have difficult conversations with them around safety. And in this instance, there was unexpected opposition from PORAC, one of the major law enforcement agencies, but we were able to work through that. So you add the challenges of remote legislating and the fact that we had colleagues that got COVID and the fact that I couldn't lobby people personally. But on the other hand, you had hundreds of volunteers and voices from Brady and others saying to the legislature, get this done. And despite that, we now have this bill on Governor Newsom's desk. And again, thanks to all of you. I am just the vessel. You are representative of the people and what is good and what is important. Let me just say one final thing about sort of the fight, which is, the next 40 days is going to dictate the politics of our country for the next generation. We all know that. What is at stake? It's about taking back the White House for someone who actually believes in gun safety. It's about taking back the Senate for legislators who actually believe in gun safety. It's about holding the House. It's about making sure we are kicking out NRA bought and paid for politicians and making sure that we are putting into office reasonable allies who can think hard about what we're going to do here. What I have been saying for the last couple of years is, for anyone who knows in California about One California, or San Bernardino, or Thousand Oaks, or Gilroy, or Santa Clarita, I could go on and on. There is only one answer what we need to do. For anyone nationally who thinks for half a second about Columbine, or Sandy Hook, or Newtown, or the Pulse nightclub, or Parkland, or Las Vegas, there's only one path for us. And I know the arc of this moral universe involving the fight around gun safety, as Dr. King would say, has been long. It's been centuries since the Second Amendment was incorporated and misinterpreted. But I am a believer that that arc of justice is going to bend toward us, and it's going to bend toward us because of the work of the Amanda Wilcoxes and the Mattie Scotts and the rest of you who are advocates for the Brady campaign. And I just want to say thank you. we're going to win this together. Together, we're going to prevail. Godspeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember David Chiu. We are in it to win it, and together we will.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen, sister. Let's run you for office.
That's
And
right.
I, as your British MC light for this afternoon, I also want to mention, Assemblymember Chiu, that there are multiple messages of thanks and gratitude and congratulations, and just in awe of your work this year, despite all of everything that's going on. So thank you to Mattie, Amanda, especially to Assemblymember David Chiu for being here today, for all of your fearless leadership. Thank you to everyone who's participated in the webinar. The conference is continuing this week, and if I may say a plug for tomorrow's session, starting at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern. It'll be a particularly powerful discussion. It will build a lot on what David Chiu was talking about here today, because it's about how survivors of gun violence, people who have lost family members and loved ones, how they take their grief and channel it into action. So it very much builds on the words of David Chiu today. So thank you, everybody. And I believe that concludes our final leadership award for the afternoon. Amanda, did you want to say something?
Just that your comments were wonderful, Assemblymember Chiu, and I guess I'd say that's Exhibit A on why we knew he had to be the one to carry this bill. Thank you for your very moving words and your passion for this issue and what you're doing to make us safer.
Thank you all. We do this for you. We do this for your families.
And thank you to everyone watching for all the wonderful comments, and congratulations.
Yes. And thank you for continuing to serve us. We appreciate you very much, and all of our leaders during this difficult time.
Thank you. I hope everyone stays safe on many, many levels. We got to keep the fight going.
Thank you.